Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host, Lockefox, and we have quite the treat in store for you. So, as always, we're going to start with some show news, and I will give you guys the majestic look at the Judah Undock while we cover some show news. Just as a constant reminder, if you want to engage with the show off air, you can join us at the TweetFleet Slack server. Information will be in the channel info below. You can just stop by the Prosper channel. We share graphs. We talk about market stuff. It's a great channel. I think it's the best. But I might be biased. Again, another quick reminder that we're at 0200 rather than 0300. Now that I know that everyone's on their version of daylight savings time, I don't think I need to talk about that anymore. If you guys haven't been watching the blog, which you can get to from eveprosper.com, we've been releasing the shows as a podcast as well. So if YouTube is not your thing, if Twitch isn't your thing, or if you just want something to play in your ears while you drive, you can go ahead and do that. The information is on the blog. Also, we just published a very special episode, thanks to the hard work of Etienne Erkeline, major contributor to the show. He got an interview with Dr. EO, and it is amazing. You guys should go download it. Reddit wasn't impressed, but Reddit's a jerk. Also, last week we launched our Patreon page at Eve Prosper. So if you want to contribute to the show, if you want to buy us a beer, feel free to drop a few bucks. That's where we're going to put the tip jar. If we can meet some of our goals, we'll add some extra content. I have some plans in the mix, but have been lacking the time to complete them. So if you want to prod me, as it were, that's going to be the place to do it. Don't feel obligated to donate. We won't be gating any content, but if you have the means and you want to donate, that's where we'll be collecting things. Also, just a quick shout out to Christopher Schell. He wrote us on YouTube on one of the previous episodes and was asking about some custom analysis for bombers and T2 ships, and unfortunately I did not have time this week to roll the new analysis. I didn't have a chance to go update the things. We can do that. The reason we haven't brought it up on any shows before is that the tools are designed to catch outliers. So if it's not behaving abnormally, we don't talk about it, is sort of the way the things go. So I'll see if I can get it into next week's show. I just totally spaced it this week. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the news. So I don't really have any slides for news this week because I was behind schedule and didn't get to do screen caps, but the 07 show was this week, and they did it earlier than usual, and I got the show got a huge wink and nod, a straight out shout out from none other than CCP Fozzie during his section where he talked about some of the changes coming in the April release and out into the June release. So I got to thank him for the shout out, and we're going to talk about minerals. He said he wants to hear me talk about minerals. We're going to talk about minerals, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's get over some of the stuff that was covered on the 07 show. The biggest bombshell is about Megazite and Zydrine, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes when we get to minerals. He announced some warp speed changes. Specifically, battle cruisers are getting a little bit faster. Warp speed rigs are switching their CPU penalty to a signature radius penalty. So we saw some outliers for that, and it might actually be a decent place to still invest. Moving on, the Tier 3 destroyers, or as the internet is calling them, D3s, are getting the nerf bat. They've been OP, and it's finally time for their reign of terror to come to an end. They're reducing the power grids, so we won't be able to overfit prop mods on them, and it's going to be more of fitting like a real normal ship rather than all of your hopes and dreams ship. Also, there's going to be a 50% build cost increase, moving the target to about 50 million a ship. I forgot to pull those as well, but we'll talk about them a little later. Also, he says we're closing the garage door Cynos, which was where you would put a Cyno up next to a tower that didn't have its shield online, and then once the ship arrived, you would put a password in, the shield would appear, and you'd be able to Cyno with impunity. This is going away. Cynos are gonna act like the shield is up at all times. And then the last big thing was the Entosis modules will be released in the April release. They will use Straunt. There will be things to do with them before the June 3rd SOV launch. There's going to be a mass penalty for using them. The T1 version will fit on a frig with a lot of effort. The T2 version will not. They're still working on feedback, but it looks like we're getting pretty close to the finalized version. And also, and I really should have put these on here, new graphics stuff is up on CC. Go check that out. I will have a link in the show notes later. I really should have done slides for that. So, with the news out of the way, let's go ahead and start where we always start, with Plex. And unfortunately, there's not a lot to say about Plex. We've been stable for the last 3 months at 800, and we continue to do so. We see spikes into the weekends and lulls into the weekdays. This is the pattern to expect. I would actually expect us to stay at this 800 target up until the June 3rd release. We might see some movement with the next release if there is some sort of hype thing, but I wouldn't put any money on it. Just expect Plex to stay at 800. Don't expect it to be an investment vehicle for the time being. Moving on, let's go right into minerals, because everybody wants to talk about minerals. Starting at the low end with titanium, we're seeing reasonably stable, very slight growth, up to about 605. I expect it to stay on this 6.0, 6.05, 6.1 sort of trajectory over the next few weeks. There's no reason to think that the TRIT supply or demand will move significantly either way. We've seen a rather interesting uptick in demand, though. We might see the price rise slightly, very slightly. Pyrite has been on a slow rise up as well. We're right now into a lull, settling into about 13. If you expect the pattern to stay, I would buy in at 13 and sell at 13.5. This might be a chance to make a couple of bucks, but it's going to be hard to make money over the taxes. So just keep that in mind here on Pyrite. Mexilon is continuing a slide. This is partially because of oversupply, partially because of the expectation of the null ore rebalance. With Mexilon no longer being no longer an expected bottleneck, we should see prices continue to slide. I don't know where the floor is for this, unfortunately, so I wouldn't be buying in. And if you have a stockpile, I'd be getting rid of it. Moving on to Isogen, we've been seeing a slight tick up after it bottoming out a couple of weeks ago at 125. Here at 130, I have a hard time believing it's going to continue to climb. It looks like it's going to lose a little steam. It should continue this behavior between 128 and 133 kind of space. I'd expect Isogen to stay reasonably stable through the next couple of weeks. Noxium looks like there was a huge sell-off yesterday, and I don't know who was doing it or why, but it's tanked the price. I expect this to rebound back up to the 680 level. There's no reason for it to really be under 660 for any extended amount of time. Noxium is still in decent balance when it comes to supply and demand, so I don't expect this. If anything, I expect it to continue climbing up to back up to 680 and maybe just a slight bit higher. But That's where we are on Noxium. And then the thing you guys are all going to want to talk about, Zydrene. Had to roll this one right before the show, so some of the formatting's a little bit weird. We saw in last week's show that during FanFest we saw a huge jump because Fozzie mentioned in his Sub 5.0 show they were going to rebalance high-end mineral supply. So we saw that tick up, expecting a constraint in supply, and everyone who got in on the action was laughing all the way to the bank. Now, I would have given the call last week, don't buy in, the action's over, the only place it can go is down as people sort of realize, where the things are going until we get details. And then Fozzie drops new bombshells on the 07 show to drive the market even more crazy. It is breaking my scale. The announcement he did was, one, that ores there won't be a new set of ores. We won't see like Fozzium or whatever ore you'd want to call it. We won't have garnet or amethyst or pearl, but we will have. They're totally rejiggering the yields of Arcanor, Bissote, Crocite, Gneiss, and Hedbigite. I want to say is the last one he specifically mentioned. In the hopes that what you mine in nullsec will be a more fair mix of what you need, and that your ISK per hour would therefore go up. But the other half, the reason that this is actually spiking again, is that he went ahead and mentioned, by the way, we are doubling the BPO requirements for Zydrene and Megasite. And that drove the market absolutely wild. It popped straight up during the show, and it continues to climb. I don't think there's much more room to climb. I expect the speculation to reach a head by Saturday. It'll probably all be figured out by Friday morning, in all honesty. This is where we are. If you manage to get lucky and buy in at a decent low spot, look for a place to sell in the next 18 hours. That is my advice here, is that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's take a look at Megasite, because I'm getting ahead of myself. We want to talk about Megasite. So Megasite had a pretty decent bubble up. We saw it reset to the level it was before with the IS Boxer announcement, which is a pretty decent place. But with the doubling in demand, speculators have gone absolutely bonkers for the stuff. So we've gone from about 900 to 1600 in the course of a couple of days. Now, I think we're going to level off and come back down to 1400. This is my personal thing, but we are in crazy-ass speculation land, and it could go anywhere and do anything. So, last, before we look at all the minerals together, let's talk about Morphite. We saw a decent spike last week, or 2 weeks ago, during the Fozzie talk, seeing as he said nothing about Mercroxit. Morphite has stayed stable at the 6,000 mark. No reason to think it'll go up or down. It's only going to be tied to Tech 2 demand, and the canary in the coal mine for Tech 2 demand is Moongoo, because, well, again, everything's out of order. We'll talk about it. To put things in perspective, I went ahead and rolled up this chart. If you watched us during the FanFest reviews, the white line represents FanFest, and the picture is of buy prices and sell prices taken from Eve Central on about a 2-hour cron. We can see that Megasite and Zydrene during Fozzie's talk took a huge bump up, but then settled back down to a more reasonable, like they peaked all the way up to like 1400, but then came back down to 800. And then during the 07 show, we saw it peak all the way up to 2,000 a unit, and then it's come back down to a more reasonable 1,700. I would expect the time to sell, if you manage to get in either before FanFest or before the 07 show, or even during the 07 show in the rise up, you got something pretty decent, I would sell within 18 hours of this show. I would be out by the weekend, and I'd be counting my money. The expectation I have is that even though we may see speculators drive the price to a new high over the weekend, even if we take Megasite from the 600 it was at all the way up to 2,500, let's say as a maximum, as a theoretical maximum, it's going to decay, and you might as well make hay while the sun shines than try to be greedy and make no money. So that's my 2 cents on it if you're a speculator. If you haven't bought in, tough titties, there's really not a whole lot more action to ride out. You could buy in tonight or tomorrow and try to ride it through the weekend, but you're only going to see a couple of percentage points. If you manage to buy in after FanFest or before the 07 show, I would sell as soon as you are able. Just take the money and run. If you want more of these kind of graphs, or you have anything you want to add to these, or other items you want to see in this kind of view, feel free to contact us at prospermarketshow@gmail.com, or on Twitter, or on the TweetFleet Slack, because I'd love to hear any feedback. Moving on, let's talk about fuel. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to talk about in the fuel markets. Things are relatively stable. We still see some instabilities in the Amar and Minmatar fuels, all bouncing up in between that 650 mark. I expect them to stay stable at that point. There's no reason to demand more or less. I actually also expect a general slope down. It's not going to be a very steep one. It's nothing to make a bunch of money on. Just expect that down is going to be the trend for the foreseeable future. Next is fuel blocks. We keep seeing spikes in the Caldari fuel blocks during weekends, but we see it even out during the rest of the weekdays. Again, the range on this sheet is not very wide, so expect trends to stay relatively flat. The only thing in the fuel market that is really moving is the price of coolant keeps dropping. So we'll talk about that in a couple more slides, but nothing really great to report on the fuel in the fuel markets. Moving on to the outliers, let's get started with, we're going to talk about advanced materials for a second. I've highlighted here crystal and carbonide because it's doing something weird. It's dipping down to 160 after a rather strong lock-in at 165. The thing that's going on in the moon markets, that's advanced materials, that's advanced components, that is basic components, I think they're called. I don't remember what the straight moon goo is actually called. Is flat. It's flat. It's flat. It's the frickin' basement. The value of moon products is at an all-time low. So if you're in T2 production, now would be a great time to stockpile, because frankly, the prices aren't going to get much lower. Now, this also means that with the prices staying locked in and stable at a low price, that I expect margins on T2 to start to wane as well, as more producers are trying to fight over less territory. The entire Tech 2 market right now is in a pretty sad state, and it has a lot to do with Tech 2 ship demand. It has a lot to do with the Ishtar nerf. I would expect some of it to come from the Troll Gnosis Scepter, whatever the Entosis Scepter thing getting kiboshed. It's just not a great time to be in T2, which is really sad because it's actually one of my favorite production markets. So I don't know when the drought is going to end. I hope we're not waiting all the way to June. I'm hoping that there is some content. We might see prices drop during April slightly more because of an expected burn Jita, but the story in moon markets is flat. and it's going to stay flat. If you want to buy, now is the time to buy in, but have some patience because it's going to be a while. Another carbide that's not acting normally is tungsten carbide. This is following a tungsten bubble as well, but being R8 dependent, I don't expect this to stay very real. If you need tungsten carbide, I'd wait a few days. We should be back down at the 110 mark by the end of the weekend. Moving into nano transistors, we saw last week that there was a spike thanks to a rise in technetium, but we're seeing that decline. We're back at the 2300 mark. I expect 2300 to be about the spot where we're locked in. A little bit below would be a good price. A little bit above would be an okay price. Again, expect things to stay relatively flat. Coolant in the PI markets continue to fall. They were falling last week and they're falling this week. It looks like we've bottomed out at about 7,500, but it's been a long fall from 9,500. I don't know what is exactly driving it. It should all be going into fuel, and fuel markets continue to move about the same amount of volume. So I don't know if this is burner PI alts. I don't know what's driving this. But we continue to see very low prices. I expect it to turn around. According to the bottom indicator in blue, it looks like we're bottoming out. And this would be a good chance to buy in. I just don't know how high it can climb or if it will climb. It could really go both ways at this point. Moving on to ships, let's talk about the Ishtar. And to be honest, the story about the Ishtar isn't so much about the price, but the volume. If you see before the release here in March, we saw reasonably stable volumes at the 200, 250 a day mark, and we've dropped down to about 150 a day. And that Ishtars are a huge driver, a huge consumer of moon products. Nothing consumes moon products like ships. All of the items put together consume like half as much as ships do. So if we don't have Tech 2 ships eating up moon supplies, we won't see margins increase on moon supplies, and we won't see those prices rise. We'll be in sort of a deflationary spiral. This has me worried just because this is a personal pet. This is a pet market of mine. I'm a big fan of hacks. I'm a big fan of Tech 2 ships. This is where I made my money years ago. And seeing so much weakness starts me worrying about the nullsec picture, because what will there be to fight for? But that's getting that's catastrophizing. So let's go ahead and move on to the Augurer, which spiked up pretty decently. The point to make on Tech 1 items is that with the BPO change, expect prices to rise by 20%. That's the median value from the prices I pulled today. If the prices hold where they are right now, which I expect them only to lose maybe 1% of their... I only expect them to fall slightly over the next month or so. If they continue to hold their value, if the change goes in as advertised, expect at least a 20% increase in prices. Now, for Tech 1 ships, that can be anywhere from 25 to 40%. For items, that ranges more from the 20 to 40%. If you want to get into the speculation market, either building T1 or buying T1 and getting it cheap will be a decent place to go do it. Now, the thing to worry about if you are going to go be speculating in the Tech 1 market is, please, for the love of God, double check the amount of volume that can be taken by the market, because it can be very easy to go say, oh, Tristan's, I have a Tristan BPO. I'm going to build 10,000 Tristans, and then you get them to market, and you will never get rid of them because you have 10,000 frickin' Tristans. So be careful. Double check the market volume information, which is in the market history tab. Try to use that as a ceiling and understand that you might be able to sell 20% of that number if you're lucky. So don't go too nuts. Also, of course, any balance change could totally can totally eat your lunch. So as with all investment, be careful. Another interesting one, the Echelon, which was a special edition asset. I don't remember which EVE birthday they gave it out on. It's a bit of an interesting exploration frigate. I don't know what its general meta purpose is on the rise. It has been on the rise for the last few weeks, but it finally ticked our monitoring system over. It looks like it's only selling 10 a day, so I don't know how much there is to really do here, but it was interesting to see such a off the beaten path item tracking our indicators this week. Another interesting one that took a big jump last week before the 07 show. These graphs are basically before the 07 show. Peaked up and was falling, but should be going back up again. If you can get it for less than 730 million, this would be a pretty decent buy. I don't have the actual build value handy, but orcas look like they're in a spot for a rebound. This might be a good chance to buy like this second, but keep an eye on orcas. The last of our ships, I'm pretty sure this is the last of the ships, is the Tengu. It has been just walloped over the last few weeks. With the announcement of Tengu's getting their place in the sun kicked, so they're no longer king of the pile for EHP. I had said that they were in the basement and they weren't going to get any lower, and then they dipped down really quick and they got a little bit lower, but they've since recovered. Again, I expect these prices to stay flat where they are at I want to say it's 140 million mark. There's really not a whole lot to say about this. Tengus are going to be cheap. If you need a Tengu, if you still want a Tengu, now is going to be the very best time to buy one. But yeah, if you are needing to sell a Tengu because it's no longer in the meta, then sucks to be you. Moving on, the subsystems were a little interesting this week. Coolant injectors have excuse me. The engineering coolant submodules for both the Proteus and the Tengu have been falling for the last few weeks, but have taken a turn back up. The volumes are extremely low, so again, keep this in mind. It looks like somebody bought out the market to reset it. I don't know if this is a general meta thing or if it is just somebody saying, this is the floor, I'm buying it out. Not really sure which way it's going. The Tengu one looks like it might be a meta. There were some pretty big moves over the last week, but it has continued to stay at very low volumes, so could be either thing. Moving on to modules, Ballistic Control System 2s have been falling, and if you believe that this trend is repeating, now would be a time to buy them. Volumes are staying relatively flat. The price seems overcorrected at the moment. This would be a good chance to jump in. I'm not sure how high it will bounce, but I expect there to be some action. So ballistic control units sell a bunch with a average daily volume of about 460. 4,600. That's the number I was looking for. And this could be a very great opportunity to go make a couple extra bucks playing the market, because it looks like we're in a bit of an oversupply market at the moment. builders will ease off, the price will shoot back up. This is a great chance right this second to go be buying ballistic control unit 2s. Small ancillary armor repairers. I believe I brought these up a couple of weeks ago when they were at their peak, saying that if you've got the blueprints and they've been sitting fallow and you've been frustrated about not being able to make a bunch of money off of them, the time to do that was 2 weeks ago. That time has ended. If you need small ancillary armor repairers, they're at a pretty decent price at the moment, so go ahead and buy them up if you need them. But I don't expect it to rise significantly. The indicators say that the price is a little overcorrected low, but I expect the price to rise maybe a couple percentage points, but not enough to really make any money. Another interesting one, this one looks like it's pretty much driven by speculation, was domination stasis webs. Somebody made a huge buy last week, and the price has just been climbing. Volumes are pretty low here. It's an item that's pretty easily substituted with about 4 others, so I don't know if it's really justified at 140 million at the moment, but 150 million, excuse me. I expect the prices to come back down, but if you manage to be the guy who bought them all out, now's the time to sell and take it to the bank, because this is a pretty hefty profit. Moving on, I didn't get a chance to walk through the next round of Tiericide, but the rest of the market did. We're looking at the E500 prototype energy vampire, and man, that thing fell like a rock and came right back. I don't know who had speculated and crashed the price, but man, it's been a wild ride. There's been a lot of this behavior in afterburners, micro warp drives, and energy vampires. Also, I expected to see more action in the meta markets for armor plates, for instance, but it didn't end up triggering any of our major indicators. It might still be buried in one of the more generous indicators, but I tend not to go into that bin because I just don't have the time. So feel free to crawl the graphs at your own leisure. They will be posted on the YouTube in the video description. There will be links to all of the raw slides if you want to go spelunking yourself. 1 meganewton micro warp drive 1s have been astronomical over the last couple of days. They're coming down pretty hard, but I would expect them to overcorrect over the weekend. So if you see them fall below 70,000, it'd be a good chance to buy up with the Megasite Zydrine thing going on. It's hard to lose on this one, but I do expect it to bounce a little bit. Once you see it fall, you buy in, it bounces up, sell it as soon as you can because it's going to fall again. That's how I expect this one to go. And then I showed on, I don't remember if I showed this on last week's show, Electron Blaster Cannon 1s had been taking a pretty steep price up. Looks like there may have been some error orders driving the numbers wrong. But it's coming back down again with input prices staying flat. I don't expect T1. I expect most T2 prices to stay flat as well. So I think this is anomalous. I think it's still going to come down. If you had bought in, it's time to sell. I wouldn't buy in again. Another interesting one, if we start getting to the implants, is the Genelution Auroral AU79. This is the golden pod. Now, I know that there are a bunch of my friends who have been sitting on this for ages. They went and they got their collector's edition, they bought up a bunch to speculate, and then the market just did not cooperate. The bottom has fallen out for a long time. So a bunch of these people have been stuck with expensive Genelution Aural AU79 golden pods, and nothing to do with them. And they've been stuck at about $1 billion for a year, over a year, since the inception. But in the last couple of weeks, they have taken a drastic upturn. We're almost to 1.6 billion. And if you have been holding on to these, now's a great chance to dust them off because the prices are really great at the moment. None of the other special edition assets flagged my stuff, so I don't know if the arm tattoos are up there too. But this is a great chance to sell off those golden pods. So get selling, absolutely get selling. Hey, Phyridian, go sell right now. Stop waiting. Oh, and this one's out of order. Dark Blood Energized Adaptive Nanomembrane is up. I'm not sure if this is due to the armor changes or a drop table change. It looks like we're a little constrained on supply, but it might as much be speculation. Again, this is reasonably easily substituted with some other enams like the Amar Navy. I want to say Sanchez has one. I can't remember what the other races that have enams. I expect the prices to keep coming down. I think they're artificially high, but again, on these high meta items, things get a little bit wonky, and my models kind of break down. As I said way at the start of the show, with the 07 announcement that warp rigs were getting some love, the large hyperspatial velocity optimizer 1 shot up and has since fallen down, but I expect it to climb a little bit. So if you bought in at the top, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to go all the way back up to 1.4 million. I think that's 1.4. I can't tell if it's either 1.4 or 14. The decimal places get caught off on the end of my screen. I expect it to climb slightly. I expect demand to pick up this up until the April release. I don't remember when the April release is actually slated to come out, but this should be an interesting meta. I would buy in a few of these and hold on to them. The volume should increase significantly over the upcoming weeks. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It might take a little bit more time than just the patch to figure out where they fit in the meta, but expect to see these in like Tech 1 battleship and battle cruiser fleets. Last part of the show is the prediction review. This is the part where I go back and figure out if I'm any good at this, and so far my hit-miss ratio is about 50-50. 280 millimeter howitzer artillery 2s I highlighted last week as being high. They fell. I was sort of hoping the good times would last a little longer, but we're back at the stable state. Looks like all the action is over. If you were able to produce into this peak, good for you. But now the action's over, so time to go home. Experimental 10 meganewton afterburners. I really should have picked this out last week. This is a pretty significant deviation here, and there's no reason our tools shouldn't have caught this, so I'll double check that. It continues to climb with the Tiricide announcement. Expect this to climb a little bit more. I expect most of the action to be done. The drop rates on these things is absolutely absurd, so I don't expect it to really get constrained. I just expect demand to stockpile a bunch of them and then realize that everybody has 10,000 of these and it's not a rare commodity. And then 250 millimeter railgun 2s. I had mentioned last week that I thought it was odd that they had spiked in spite of the Skylar release nerfing them, and the market responded, and we're back down where I expected them to be after the Skylar nerf. So it looks like we might be bottoming out at 12,000. No, 1.2 million, excuse me. It might bottom out there, but I don't expect it to go up at all. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end the show. I have been your host, Lockefox. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like the show and you like what we do, please consider stopping by our Patreon page at patreon.com/EveProsper. If you have the means to donate, if you want to donate, that's the place to send us a beer. If you want to follow us off the air, the best place to do so is on the Tweetfleet Slack server. Information will be in the channel below. You can come join us in the Prosper channel. That is the best place to go to interact off air. We share graphs, we talk about industry, we talk about the market. Outside of that, you can follow the show on Twitch at EveProsper and on Twitter at EveProsper. I do post graphs during the week when I can go make them. Also, show announcements will go there, just in case you want to tune in live and don't trust the Twitch interface. And last, come check out the new podcast we just launched, all of the shows that we do here for YouTube and Twitch, as well as a few special shows. We just released a interview with Dr. Iyo from FanFest, thanks to the hard work of Etienne Erkeline. Those are up now. We have another one in the pipeline we should be releasing next week. And I will figure out iTunes and Stitcher over the weekend. Again, you can tune into that podcast at eveprosper.com. Thanks again for tuning in. We're live every Friday at 0200 at twitch.tv/eveprosper. I've been your host, Lockefox, and I will see you all next week.